The room was unnaturally quiet. Not the kind of silence that brings peace, but the kind that presses down on your thoughts and makes you aware of every breath you take. A large digital map glowed on the wall, painted with red zones, radar circles, and warning symbols that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Every man sitting at the table understood what that map meant. They weren't here to plan a routine mission. They were here to discuss something that already felt lost. Colonel Harris stood at the front, his posture rigid, his eyes tired. He had delivered briefings for decades, but tonight his voice carried a weight none of the pilots had heard before. When he finally spoke, it was slow and deliberate, as if each word needed permission to exist. The enemy command facility in Sector 9 had been active for months, coordinating missile launches, drone strikes, and supply movements across multiple regions. Intelligence confirmed that if the facility remained operational, the next phase of the war would begin within weeks. Thousands of lives would be affected, many of them civilians. Destroying the facility could delay the enemy's plans and possibly change the direction of the conflict. The problem was getting there. Sector 9 was a nightmare for pilots. Dense radar coverage, layered air defenses, and patrol squadrons rotating day and night. Every previous attempt to approach the area had ended the same way: early detection, heavy resistance, and forced retreat. Some aircraft never returned at all. When the success probability appeared on the screen, no one reacted. 12%. It wasn't shocking. It was confirmation of what they already felt. This mission was less about victory and more about buying time. At the far end of the table, Captain Ethan Cole sat motionless. His face revealed nothing, but his mind was already working. He watched the simulations play again and again, noticing patterns others either missed or avoided acknowledging. The same entry route. The same altitude. The same escape path. Predictability dressed up as planning. When the briefing ended, chairs scraped softly against the floor as the pilots stood. Conversations were brief and quiet. No one talked about odds anymore. They all understood the truth. This mission would demand something beyond training or experience. Later that night, the hangar lights cast long shadows across the concrete floor. Ethan stood alone near his aircraft, listening to the distant hum of equipment and the steady movements of the ground crew. He placed his hand against the cold metal, feeling the familiar surface that had carried him through countless missions. Lieutenant Mark Reyes approached, breaking the silence. He looked exhausted, the kind of tired that sleep couldn't fix. They exchanged a few words, careful and restrained, both avoiding the subject hanging between them. When Reyes asked if Ethan thought they would make it back, Ethan didn't lie, but he didn't tell the whole truth either. After Reyes left, Ethan returned to his quarters. Sleep refused to come. Instead, he opened his tablet and began reviewing data: radar ranges, terrain elevation, enemy response times. Hour after hour passed as he studied the information, his mind racing through possibilities. Somewhere between logic and instinct, a thought began to form. Not a safe idea. Not a smart one. But a different one. Every official plan assumed survival depended on avoiding detection. Ethan began considering what would happen if detection became unavoidable, and how it could be used instead of feared. The idea unsettled him. It was reckless. Extreme. Almost suicidal. But it was the only scenario that didn't end in the same failure he had already seen on the screen. As dawn approached, Ethan sat quietly, staring at nothing, knowing that by the time the sun rose, the mission would already be in motion. And somewhere deep inside him, a decision was taking shape, one that could either doom them all or change everything. The engines roared as the jets pushed forward on the runway. Ethan felt the vibration travel through the cockpit and into his chest. The moment the wheels left the ground there was no turning back. The sky ahead looked calm, but he knew it was filled with unseen danger. Each second carried them closer to enemy airspace and closer to a point of no return. The squadron stayed low, using the terrain to hide from radar. Mountains and valleys passed beneath them like shadows. Ethan kept his eyes fixed on the instruments while his mind calculated every movement. He remembered the alternate plan he had not shared fully with Command. He knew it would only work if he was willing to pay the highest price. As they crossed into hostile territory, the warning systems began to hum softly. Enemy radar had noticed something. Ethan adjusted altitude and speed, guiding the formation into a narrow corridor between detection zones. For a brief moment it worked. The sky remained quiet. Then the alarms screamed. Missiles launched from the ground, rising like fire toward the squadron. Ethan did not hesitate. He pulled his jet upward, drawing the missile locks toward himself. He knew exactly what he was doing. By becoming the primary target, he was buying time for the others. Mark Reyes' voice cracked over the radio, asking what Ethan was doing. Ethan answered calmly, telling him to follow the planned route and not look back. There was no fear in his voice. Only certainty. Enemy fire intensified. The sky around Ethan filled with smoke and flashes of light. His jet shook violently as explosions tore through the air nearby. He maneuvered hard, pushing the aircraft beyond safe limits. The warning lights flooded the cockpit, but he ignored them. Every second he survived was another second the mission stayed alive. The facility appeared in the distance, massive and heavily guarded. Ethan realized he would never reach it himself. His fuel was dropping fast and the damage was growing worse. Still he stayed on course, drawing every missile and every gun toward him. The enemy believed he was the main strike. The squadron slipped past unnoticed. Ethan watched on his screen as the others approached the target. He felt a strange calm settle over him. The mission was no longer doomed. It was working. A direct hit struck his left wing. The jet lurched violently. Control systems failed one by one. Flames spread along the fuselage. Ethan struggled to stabilize, but he already knew the truth. There would be no return flight for him. Command ordered him to eject. He looked at the altitude and the terrain below. Ejection would mean capture. Capture would mean the mission secrets exposed. Ethan made his choice. He turned his damaged jet toward a cluster of enemy defense towers near the facility. With his remaining control, he aimed carefully. His breathing slowed. His thoughts cleared. He thought of his squadron. He thought of the lives this mission would save. The bombs detonated at the facility. The explosion lit up the horizon. Enemy command structures collapsed. Chaos erupted across their defenses. At the same moment, Ethan pushed the throttle forward one last time. His jet struck the defense towers at full speed. The impact was instant. There was no pain. Only light. The squadron felt the shockwave even from a distance. Mark Reyes shouted Ethan's name over the radio, but there was no response. Silence answered him. They escaped through the mountains exactly as planned. The enemy defenses were crippled and disorganized. The mission succeeded beyond expectation. But victory carried a heavy cost. When the remaining pilots returned to base, there was no celebration. They stood quietly on the runway, staring at the empty space where one jet should have been. Command confirmed what they already knew. Captain Ethan Cole was declared Shaheed. His sacrifice was recorded as the turning point of the mission. Analysts later confirmed that without his diversion, the squadron would have been destroyed before reaching the target. His extreme move changed the outcome of the operation and saved countless lives. Ethan did not return as a pilot. He returned as a legend. His name was etched into memory not as someone who survived, but as someone who chose sacrifice so others could live. The mission that was destined to fail succeeded because one man was willing to give everything.